Hey all, so I messed up. I accidentally edited the first ride video, which covers days 31 and 32, before this video, which covers days 29 and 30. So y'all got that video a little early. Before we had our first ride, it was muddy in the round pen, so we took our Mustangs down to the jump field and taught them how to jump. If you haven't been following from the beginning, I'm a working student for Elisa Wallace, and together with her other working student, Megan Malloy, we're training a trio of Mustangs to compete in the Mustang Classic in September together. So we took all three of our Mustangs down and had to play in the jump field. So I didn't film a whole lot. When I first took him down here, I started with one of these white poles. I had him send over that back and forth, and then I started having him trot over it back and forth, and then introduce more and more poles, and eventually got him to jump the log like you saw in the previous clip.
Pony says I got it. He's very speedy speeds. Woo! I just jumped to Oxa. That was fun.
Gradually we built up to doing what you see in the videos. I just didn't have any of that filmed.
There we go.
The way I teach horses to go over obstacles is to give them a direction just like I were lunging them, and then release when they show any interest in the obstacle. I reward curiosity and forward motion and keep them pointed at the obstacle until they're over it. But it's okay if they hesitate, they're still learning, so I'm okay if they take as long as they need to be curious and investigate before charging through whatever obstacle I point them at. Here Odyssey didn't have the best approach to this, and he didn't see that I raised it until it was too late. But it was a really good experience for him because this was the first time he knocked something over.
I mean, that's a good
I lowered it because he was starting to anticipate stopping too soon after the jump. So I wanted to let him go a little longer before stopping.
And then he gets like stuck in it. He's like, yeah, go. Gotta go, gotta go.
I know.
Because he's unsure and he's still very new to all this, he gets into this speedy mode where he tries to do everything really fast. And then he kind of forgets a little bit, so I had to cue him to stop a couple times there. But that's just because he's anxious, and that'll go away as he gets more confident.
He's already jumping higher than Talos. Sorry, Talos.
Hey, Talos did one huge jump through the curtain the first time. He was like,
Bless him.
and then he was like, oh, it's like, Ellen, that was all the jump he had for the rest
That was like that lifelong.
once in a lifetime.
So then I was just practicing letting him go for a little longer after the jump because he was getting nervous about having to stop right after and not quite sure how he could clear the jump and then immediately stop. So I let him go a little longer after the jump. This is a good demonstration of how I teach him to send over obstacles. This is what we did the first time I asked him to go over a white pole, and what I did when I asked him to go over the puddle you saw in the beginning of the video. So he's nervous, and I release when he checks it out, and he's allowed to take as long as he needs to check it out. And so when he backs up, I ask him to go forward again. I don't want him to learn to sit on the pressure of the halter, but as soon as he comes off, he gets a release. And then he gets a full release of pressure as long as he's checking it out and thinking about it, and then he offers to jump it. The next day, it was time for Odyssey to have his feet trimmed, and you can see the culmination of all the work I've put into his hoof handling skills from the very beginning, and how I've taught him to be safe and confident with having his hoofs handled. So here I'm demonstrating some of the things I'll do with the hoof pick that make noise on his hoof. This is just for him to hear the noise that mimics the sound of the farrier using tools or nailing a shoe on. I was having some serious filming difficulties from my phone running out of space, randomly stopping filming, or falling over. But here you go, this is what I got. So here I'm starting to use my right leg and pressing it onto the outside of his front leg to prepare him for this, which is when I start to put the hoof in between my knees. Now, a lot of preparation has gone into this off camera. This is not the first time I've done any of this stuff with him. This is just the first time I've filmed it for you guys. So a lot of this I do a little bit every day. Every time I pick out his feet, I will tap it with the hoof pick, I'll put it up against my leg, I'll pull his hoof forward as if I were going to set it on a hoof stand. I'll do these things just a little bit each day to make him better. And this is the first time I put his hoof on my knee. He was unsure, he tried to take it back. I was just patient with him, and as soon as he was good for 1 second, I set his hoof down. I learned how to barefoot trim so I can do all my Mustangs first trims myself to make sure that it will be a safe and confidence building experience for them. And so I've picked up a lot of techniques that make my horses as prepared as they possibly can be for their first trims, and they always do really well. Well, I teach my horses to put their hooves on hoof stands because that's necessary for farriers that want to trim them down the line. I don't typically use them for the first trims. I find that it's just more in the way and more stress for the horse, and it's pretty easy for me to do the basic trim without. So then I started introducing my tools. I forgot to film using the hoof knife on this hoof, but this is his first time seeing the farrier tools, and so right now I'm not trimming him. I wanted to wait until Elisa was around to give me guidance and make sure I'm keeping his hooves in the right balance, and so I trimmed him later, but for now I was just making tiny little cuts just to make the sound of the nippers so he can hear that and get used to it. So again with the rasp, I just wanted it to make noise so he could hear it, and he really didn't care about any noises happening on his hooves. So I just wanted to use each tool just a tiny bit on each hoof to get him prepared for when I did actually trim him. Now if you're not a barefoot trimmer and you're not going to do your Mustang's first trim, I really recommend borrowing or using some farrier tools on your horse's hooves to prepare them as best as you can for when the farrier trims them. This is going to make your farrier's life easier and safer, and this is going to make your horse have a better experience. If you can get your horse used to the tools and really good with having their hooves handled all sorts of ways, it's going to be easier for your horse because they know you rather than some stranger approaching them and trying to do something completely new to them. And I don't recommend trimming your own horse if you're not actively being watched and guided by a professional who knows how to trim. You can do serious damage if you trim them wrong, so I learned by having guidance, and I still have guidance when I trim to make sure I'm not throwing my horse's hooves out of balance. I couldn't get the nippers to make a sound, and it's kind of hard to trim one-handed, so Odyssey got to practice having his hoofs set on my knees.
The Mustangs, boy, I'll do this one on like really underneath the slash behind them. If you decide they want to get squirrely. Oh, it's just hard, I know. Yep. Trying to get good leverage. This is not Good boy. Boy.
Alright, so now that y'all get the gist of what I was doing with him, I'm just going to speed up me doing the other side. So you can kind of see I used the nippers, I made some noise with the rasp, and then I went to the other foot, same thing with all three tools, the hoof knife, the nippers, and the rasp, and just got him used to that. Then when I had Elisa available for some guidance, I actually gave him a trim. He was really good. I took my time, but all of the preparation paid off. It was a very basic trim You can see I've labeled these pictures with which hooves were trimmed and untrimmed at the time. He had quite a bit of flare in the back, as you can see here, and so just starting to take that down, I can only do so much in one trim, but in a few cycles it starts to go away and get better and better. It's not the cleanest, it's not rasped to perfection, but pretty darn good for a Mustang's first trim, and he was super well behaved. Alrighty, well thank y'all so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video, which will be in order following the first ride video, and you can see Odyssey's second ride.